Volume 1, Book 11, number 665. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. Once I passed the night in the house of my aunt Maimuna. Allah's apostle offered the Isha prayer and then came to the house and offered 4 rakat and slept. Later on, he woke up and stood for the prayer and I stood on his left side. He drew me to his right and prayed 5 rakat and then 2. He then slept till I heard him snoring, or heard his breath sounds. Afterwards he went out for the morning prayer. Volume 1, Book 11, number 666. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. One night I slept at the house of my aunt Maimuna and the Prophet was there on that night. He performed ablution and stood up for the prayer. I joined him and stood on his left side, but he drew me to his right and prayed 13 rakat and then slept till I heard his breath sounds. And whenever he slept, he used to breathe with audible sounds. The muezzin came to the Prophet and he went out and prayed the morning prayer, without repeating the ablution. Volume 1, Book 11, number 667. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. Once I passed the night in the house of my aunt Maimuna. The Prophet stood for the night prayer and I joined him and stood on his left side, but he drew me to his right by holding me by the head. Volume 1, Book 11, number 668. Narrated by Mu'adh bin Jabal. I used to pray the Isha prayer with the Prophet and then go to lead my people in the prayer. Volume 1, Book 11, number 669. Narrated by Amra. Jabir bin Abdullah said, Mu'adh bin Jabal used to pray with the Prophet and then go to lead his people in prayer. Once he led the Isha prayer and recited Surah Al-Baqarah. Somebody left the prayer and Mu'adh criticized him. The news reached the Prophet and he said to Mu'adh, "You are putting the people to trial," and repeated it thrice, or said something similar, and ordered him to recite 2 medium surahs of Mufassal. Amra said that he had forgotten the names of those surahs. Volume 1, Book 11, number 670. Narrated by Abu Mas'ud. A man came and said, "O Allah's apostle, by Allah, I keep away from the morning prayer only because so and so prolongs the prayer when he leads us in it." The narrator said, "I never saw Allah's apostle more furious in giving advice than he was at that time." He then said, "Some of you make people dislike good deeds, the prayer. So whoever among you leads the people in prayer should shorten it because among them are the weak, the old and the needy." Volume 1, Book 11, number 671. Narrated by Abu Hurairah. Allah's apostle said, "If any one of you leads the people in the prayer, he should shorten it, for amongst them are the weak, the sick and the old. And if anyone among your prays alone, then he may prolong the prayer as much as he wishes." Volume 1, Book 11, number 672. Narrated by Abu Mas'ud. A man came and said, "O Allah's apostle, I keep away from the morning prayer because so and so, Imam, prolongs it too much." Allah's apostle became furious and I had never seen him more furious than he was on that day. The Prophet said, "O people, some of you make others dislike the prayer, so whoever becomes an Imam he should shorten the prayer, as behind him are the weak, the old and the needy." Volume 1, Book 11, number 673. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari. Once a man was driving 2 nadiyas, camels used for agricultural purposes, and night had fallen. He found Mu'adh praying, so he made his camel kneel and joined Mu'adh in the prayer. The latter recited Surah Al-Baqarah, or Surah An-Nisa, so the man left the prayer and went away. When he came to know that Mu'adh had criticized him, he went to the Prophet and complained against Mu'adh. The Prophet said thrice, "O Mu'adh, are you putting the people to trial?" It would have been better if you had recited, Sabi Isma Rabbika El-Ala, 87, Wash Shamsi Wadu Haha, 91, or Wal Laili Ida Yasha, 92, for the old, the weak and the needy pray behind you. Jabir said that Mu'ah recited Surah Al-Baqarah in the Aisha prayer. Volume 1, Book 11, number 674. Narrated by Anas. The Prophet used to pray a short prayer, in congregation, but used to offer it in a perfect manner. Volume 1, Book 11, number 675. Narrated by Abdullah bin Abi Qatada. My father said, the Prophet said, when I stand for prayer, I intend to prolong it, but on hearing the cries of a child, I cut it short, as I dislike to trouble the child's mother. Volume 1, Book 11, number 676. Narrated by Anas bin Malik. I never prayed behind any imam a prayer lighter and more perfect than that behind the Prophet, and he used to cut short the prayer whenever he heard the cries of a child, lest he should put the child's mother to trial. Volume 1, Book 11, number 677. Narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, when I start the prayer I intend to prolong it, but on hearing the cries of a child, I cut short the prayer because I know that the cries of the child will incite its mother's passions. Volume 1, Book 11, number 678. Narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, whenever I start the prayer I intend to prolong it, but on hearing the cries of a child, I cut short the prayer because I know that the cries of the child will incite its mother's passions. Volume 1, Book 11, number 679. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. Mu'ah used to pray with the Prophet and then go and lead his people, tribe, in the prayer. Volume 1, Book 11, number 680. Narrated by Aisha. When the Prophet became ill in his fatal illness, someone came to inform him about the prayer, and the Prophet told him to tell Abu Bakr to lead the people in the prayer. I said, Abu Bakr is a soft-hearted man, and if he stands for the prayer in your place, he would weep and would not be able to recite the Quran. The Prophet said, tell Abu Bakr to lead the prayer. I said the same as before. He repeated the same order, and on the third or the fourth time he said, you are the companions of Joseph. Tell Abu Bakr to lead the prayer. So Abu Bakr led the prayer, and meanwhile the Prophet felt better and came out with the help of two men, as if I see him just now dragging his feet on the ground. When Abu Bakr saw him, he tried to retreat, but the Prophet beckoned him to carry on. Abu Bakr retreated a bit and the Prophet sat on his left side. Abu Bakr was repeating the takbir, Allahu Akbar, of Allah's apostle for the people to hear.